r/NeckBeardStories by Redmond Dtes. Living with two neckbeards and a legbeard. Part 2. Hello Reddit peoples. I'm back with another tale of life with two neckbeards and a legbeard. I said in my last post that I'd be including our second neckbeard in this post as he has yet to make an appearance. So here goes. Part 1 link. Video link in description. I wanna say this tale takes place about 5-6 months after we first started living with Mike and Janice. I can't remember the exact date. Around this time, Mike's little brother, Declan, had been arguing with his mum constantly. He had told us all that she was being unreasonable, yelling at him for minor things, and had been trying to bully him into getting a job that he didn't want. Due to this, they'd been arguing non-stop, and eventually his mum had told him he had to find somewhere else to live. We later heard through a friend of the family that she'd actually kicked Declan out because he dropped out of college without telling her, refused to get a job, and just wanted to sit around drinking and watching telly all day. He'd also put several holes in the walls and doors in his drunken state. Mike didn't want to see his little brother struggling, so he and Janice talked to myself and Carrie and guilt-tripped convinced us to let him stay with us for a while. And so, our second neckbeard moved in. Unlike Janice and Mike, who spent the majority of time in their bedroom, thus making it easier to contain the smell, Declan had taken up residence on our sofa bed in the living room. He opted to spend most days lying on his sofa bed, eating and drinking and watching telly through our bloody Netflix account, and generally did nothing to contribute to the house. But, hey, what did we expect? We'd already been living with his lazy older brother for months. Why would Declan be any different? He was also more aggressive than Mike, as seen by his habit of punching holes in walls at his mum's house. There was one instance where he got really snippy at Carrie for moving some empty Chinese takeaway containers off his bed. At this point we were still desperately trying to keep the flat somewhat clean. Apparently she shouldn't have been touching his belongings, because apparently takeaway containers are now collectibles. I don't really feel comfortable writing down what he said next, but Carrie has told me it's fine. It shows how much of a piece of crap he is. You see, Carrie is quiet, but she won't take people's baloney if they talk to her like that, so she argued back. To which Declan responded with, "Just because you have a dong doesn't mean you get to talk back to me like that. You're the woman here, so start acting like it the next time you want to move something, you laughing ask." I had absolutely no idea that this happened until a few months back. Carrie had said she didn't want to worry me. If I'd known, I would have flipped. At the very least, he never spoke to her like that again until we moved out, but that's a whole other story. He even apologized to her afterwards, buying her perfume and chocolate to make it up to her. Carrie didn't accept these gifts but told him she was willing to move forward since, again, we didn't really have anywhere to go. After this incident he mostly focused his anger on the occasional phone calls he had with his mum, that poor woman, and sometimes Mike, though they often got over it very quickly. Declan was, like Mike and Janice, a creep, though he never focused on anyone in particular. Oh no. You see, Declan liked to focus his flirting efforts on any random girl in the street that he found attractive. I remember one instance where I'd been stuck with Declan in HMV and he tried to work his magic on the girl at the till. I'd been looking for a gift for my little cousin, leaving Declan to his own devices as I had a little look around. When I found what I was looking for, I headed back to the till to pay for it, only to find Declan flirting, I think that's what he called it anyway, with the clearly very uncomfortable employee. At one point he'd even reached over to try and grab her hand to admire her nails. I headed over to pay for my things, managing to make Declan move to the side, further away from the girl at the till. We made small talk whilst she scanned everything, and I managed to mouth a quick sorry to her, subtly tilting my head in Declan's direction when he wasn't looking. She chuckled a bit at this, waving me off. I swear to God, I thought Declan was going to snap his neck with how quickly he looked up to glare at us. I thought that was the end of it until Mike asked if he could have a serious talk with me that night. You know that episode of Friends where Ross flips out at Chandler for stealing the pizza delivery girl from him just because he acts like a normal human being and pays for the food? Yeah, this is the kinda situation we had here. Declan had gone crying to Mike, telling him that he was flirting with a really attractive girl and I just barged in and ruined it for him and made him look bad. Darling, I think you did that yourself. I told Mike what happened and, surprisingly, he believed me. But he asked me if I'd be able to just leave him be next time as Declan gets really excited when he gets to talk girls. Yeah, I'm sure he does. I told Mike that I wouldn't want to upset Declan, but if he's making someone uncomfortable then I'm not just gonna stand there. Needless to say, Declan didn't speak to me for a few days after that. It was heaven. It was around this time that Janice and Mike had decided to get a bit more brave with their attempts to win Carrie and I over. I guess having another creep in the house made them a bit more confident. Around a month or so after Declan moved in, there was a death in my family. I really don't want to go into a lot of detail as it's still a sore spot for me, but basically there'd been some family drama that resulted in me not being informed about the funeral and as a result, I missed it. I was absolutely distraught at this point, even had to take a couple of weeks off work, who were thankfully very understanding. Carrie was an absolute godsend during this time and spent the majority of her free time taking care of me, which I still feel bad about. He shouldn't have had to, but this wouldn't be in the post if the clan didn't do something to make it worse. It started off kind of subtle. I'd broken a glass one afternoon and had broken down crying. That's the kind of headspace I was in, you know, where minor things going wrong feel like the end of the world. Janice had heard the glass breaking and came to check on me. At first, she did what most other people would do in that situation. She picked up some of the glass on the floor and checked over my hand for any cuts, a couple scratches but nothing serious. But that was about it for acting like a normal human being. She asked me if I wanted to watch a movie to cheer me up. I politely declined and told her I just wanted to go to bed, maybe even try and do some college work if I felt up to it. She ignored me and started talking about how she'd just downloaded the Harry Potter box set, and didn't I just love Harry Potter? That'd definitely cheer me up. I again told her that I really didn't feel like it. She, again, ignored me, talking about how she'd make me feel all better. By this point, Mike was in the kitchen with us, asking what was wrong. It was at this point that it dawned on me that I was stuck at home with these two as Carrie was out working. Declan was also out for a job center appointment and, presumably, to harass more random people. Mike, of course, agreed that the best thing for me to do was watch a movie with them. He eventually resorted to picking me up and carrying me to the, now folded up, sofa bed. Might I remind you that this was the same sofa bed that Declan had been practically living in since he got here. The sofa bed that was contaminated with bit of rotting food, spilled drinks and Declan's sweat shadow. If I hadn't been such an emotional wreck I'd have boped at the thought of it, but the state of the couch was the least of my concerns. Janice and Mike sat down either side of me. Mike had an arm wrapped around both mine and Janice's shoulders, pulling me closer to the unbearable scent of BO, and Janice leaned on me and moved her legs until she was half sitting on my lap, effectively pinning me to the couch. I'd kind of given up at this point and had opted to just try to enjoy the movie as much as I could whilst trying to block out the vile scent that was bombarding me from all sides. Then, they decided they were hungry. Thankfully they didn't try to cook. Instead Janice brought through some crisps and chocolate bars. I wasn't really hungry, so I just sat back and tried to avoid the crumbs that they were wiping on their clothes. At some point, Mike had tried to feed me. Not as in asking if I wanted a packet of crisps, oh no, that's too normal. He held crisps up to my mouth and tried to get me to eat. Now, if you folks read the last post, you'll know that Mike's personal hygiene was far from the best and there was no way in hell I was gonna eat anything out of his hand. I had gotten a bit frustrated and decided to just grab an unopened packet of crisps and have a couple just to get Mike to leave me alone, but this apparently wasn't the right thing to do. He took the packet out of my hand and held up another crisp for me to eat. When I refused to take it, Mike said something that I genuinely didn't realize was as messed up until I was telling Carrie about it the next day. He said, "You have to eat something. Do you really think, insert deceased family member's name here, would want to see you like this?" He literally used my recently deceased relative to try and guilt trip me into letting him feed me. What the F? I literally was going to eat, just not out of his hand. Thankfully, Carrie had been working in a school kitchen at this time, so she arrived home about 2ish to save me from the greasy couple. Sorry this got really long. I was going to add the story about the time Declan tried to save a woman from her husband in Burger King to kind of lighten the mood a bit. I mean, that lady put him in his place. But I'll write about that in the next post as this got pretty long. Bit of an abrupt ending, but I'm pretty tired. Sorry guys. That's all folks. Thanks for watching. Have a nice evening. Kitos.